Hello, friends. Let's read another science story together. My name is Mrs. C, and today I'll be reading a book titled The Story of Snow. This book also has a subtitle, The Science of Winter's Wonder. It was written by Mr. Mark Casino and John Nelson. Before I begin reading our book, let's look at 6 of the vocabulary words that you'll hear during today's story that I think we should understand before we begin. The story of snow. All right, our first word I want you to understand is particle. Next, we have bacteria. Third, we have hexagon. Our fourth vocabulary word is column. Next, we have microscope. And our last vocabulary word is wither. Let's look at all 6 of these words with their definitions and some images that will help us better understand. Particle. A particle is a small object which can be described by properties such as volume or mass. This is a really cool image because all of these particles have been magnified or made to look much larger than they actually are. This big brown rope-looking image that you see is actually a human hair. So think about the hairs on your head right now. They're not nearly this big, right? So this is magnified to look much larger. This is a piece of fine beach sand. We also have a grain of salt, a white blood cell, a grain of pollen. So all of these things are zoomed in to look much bigger than they are because they're all particles. They're really, really tiny. Our next word is bacteria. Bacteria are mostly free-living organisms, often consisting of one biological cell. So humans are made up of about 30 trillion cells. Bacteria is made up of only one. Here are some illustrations of some bacteria and their common shapes. Here is an enhanced image that was zoomed in with a microscope to show what bacteria can look like when it is magnified. And a lot of times when we think of bacteria, we think of bad things, things that can make us sick. And a lot of bacteria can do that, but some bacteria is very good. We actually need some types of bacteria. Our third vocabulary word was hexagon. A hexagon is a plane figure, so it's a flat figure with 6 straight sides and angles. When you think of the shape called hexagon, you probably think of this regular hexagon right here. You can see all 6 of its sides. You can see all 6 of its angles. This is a regular hexagon. But a hexagon doesn't have to be shaped like this. It just needs 6 straight sides and angles. So both of these shapes, this red and this green, these are hexagons just like the blue one. We call them irregular hexagons because they're not the regular shape we usually see, but they are still hexagons. Next, we have column. A column is an arrangement of object shapes and numbers one above the other. So you might also hear the word column described when you're looking at shapes like this, like on a building. These are columns. See how they're going straight up and down? But a lot of times, especially in math, when we're talking about columns, we are talking about things that go up and down or vertically arranged. When we're talking about things that go side to side or horizontal, we would call those rows. So rows go side to side, columns go up and down. All right. Microscope is our next vocabulary word. A microscope is a laboratory instrument used to examine objects that are too small to be seen. So things like that bacteria, we can't see that with our eyes. We need to use something like a microscope. Some things we can see, like that human hair, look a lot different when we look at them under a microscope. So here's someone, they're looking at this top piece. Here's a real photograph. And down here is where you would place the item or object that you wanted to see magnified or made to look much bigger. Right here is where you'd place that on this real photograph. So that is a microscope. Our last vocabulary word is wither. Wither means to become dry and shriveled or fall into decay or decline. So if you look at these roses, they're laying down, right? They're not straight up anymore. Their petals are falling. They look very dried. So we would say this plant is withering. This dry grass over here is doing the same thing, right? These stalks are breaking. It's probably not going to last much longer, right? It's actually going to fall into decay or decline, which means it's not going to be here. It's probably going to disappear over time. It's going to just wither away. All right, so we are going to hear all 6 of those vocabulary words in today's book, The Story of Snow. We've got our subtitle, The Science of Winter's Wonder, our author, Mark Cassino with John Nelson, and over here on the title page, we also have our illustrator. So our illustrator drew all these beautiful pictures, and her name is Nora Ayagi. All right, let's begin reading. Our story starts on a winter day, high up in the sky, in a cloud that is very, very cold. This is the story of snow. Snow begins with a speck. Clouds are mostly made of air and water, but there are also bits of other things, like tiny particles of dirt, ash, and salt. Even living bacteria can float in the wind and end up in a cloud. A snow crystal needs one of these specks to start growing. These specks are all much smaller than the eye can see, but if you could see them, look at these dots. So they're smaller even than these dots. You might see grain of pollen from a flower. You might see ash or soot from a volcano or fire. Maybe some salt left over from ocean water that evaporates, or a particle of soil. You might even see bacteria from plant leaves. All of them so tiny that they're just itty bitty particles. The speck becomes the center of a snow crystal. When a speck gets cold enough, water vapor will stick to it. If you had a microscope that could see such small things, here is what you would see. Water vapor sticks to the cold speck, making the speck wet. More water vapor sticks to the wet speck, forming a water droplet. The droplet freezes into a ball of ice. More water vapor sticks to the ball of ice and it grows into a hexagon-shaped ice crystal. Water vapor continues to stick to the crystal. Faster growth on the corners causes 6 branches to sprout. It keeps going. The branches keep growing, sprouting little arms of their own, and beautiful snow crystals are born. A snow crystal forms as it falls. As the snow crystal gets bigger and heavier, it starts to fall to Earth. It keeps growing as it falls through its cloud, taking on its own special shape. The shape depends on how wet the cloud is and how cold it is. A snow crystal can start to grow one way, but then grow another way when it passes through a wetter or colder part of its cloud. The crystal stops growing soon after falling below the clouds. Look at that beautiful variety. Snow crystals can be stars. One common snow crystal shape is the star. Star-shaped snow crystals usually have 6 arms reaching out from a center point. The center point is the home of the speck that started the crystal. The 6 arms look alike, but they are almost never alike. Snow crystals can be plates. Plate crystals are thin like star crystals, but they don't have arms. The simplest kind of plate is a hexagon with 6 straight sides. More complicated plates have points where arms almost grew. So this is the simplest form. Some of them look like this, like they tried to grow arms and they just didn't work out very well. There's a real photograph, right? And that's taken with a microscope. It's zoomed in and magnified very, very close. Snow crystals can also be columns. Column-shaped snow crystals are shaped like pencils. They're not flat like stars and plates. Columns can form high in the clouds and at very cold temperatures. They are very tiny, and when they fall, they make for very slippery snow. So here are the 3 types: a solid column, a hollow column, and a capped column. It says this is the actual size. You can't even see that little tiny dot. It's so, so, so little. 6 is the magic number for snow crystals. This is because of the nature of water. Water molecules, the smallest units of water, attach themselves into groups of six, which usually leads to crystals with 6 arms or 6 sides. That's why some of the snowflakes almost always have those 6 arms. Snow crystals are rarely perfect. So much can happen during a snow crystal's fall to Earth. It is rare that one will turn out perfectly. If a drop of water passes close to one arm of a snow crystal, that arm can start to grow faster. Before long, that one arm will be a lot longer than the others. So a lot of times when we draw snowflakes, we see those perfect ones. But actually, a lot of times they'll look like this with arms that are longer and arms that are shorter. A snow crystal can be a twin. A snow crystal can have 12 arms. This is a twin crystal, which happens when two crystals start from the original speck and form on top of each other. A snow crystal can also have bumps. If there are enough water droplets near the crystal, some can strike the crystal and freeze on contact. This gives the crystal little bumps called rime. Many snow crystals make one snowflake. Often snow crystals bump into each other and get stuck together. When this happens, snowflakes form. Hundreds or even thousands of snow crystals can be found in a single snowflake. Once a snow crystal lands, it starts to wither away. Snow crystals can't keep growing after they fall from the clouds, and when a crystal stops growing, it immediately starts to wither. Soon the arms of the crystal break down and the crystal shape becomes rounded. This means that if you want to see a snow crystal, you need to catch it in the air or find it very soon after it lands. Are no two snow crystals alike? Some simple plate crystals may appear exactly alike as seen through a high-quality microscope. When it comes to more complicated snow crystals, though, odds are that no two are exactly alike. But then, no two leaves, flowers, or people are exactly alike either. Snow crystals are like us. We're each different, but we have a lot in common. So in this book, there were a lot of tiny facts that I couldn't read because it would just take too long. If you want to check this book out from your local library, there's even more information you can learn in it. There's also a neat experiment where you catch your own snow crystals, but you might need to leave the state of Florida if you want to do this experiment because we don't really have snow here. Also, snow catching tips if you ever take a vacation. All right. So again, the title of this book was The Story of Snow. If you want to check it out from your local library, you'll also want to look up the author, Mark Cassino. I really hope you enjoyed listening to today's story, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.